Let me address the opening kind of topic of vocal technique that I find is the most plaguing thing going on. It's that choral directors generally mistake choral technique and vocal technique. They think it's the same thing. And they're not the same thing. And a lot of us are like, yeah, I know that there are two different things, but we often misconstrue what is choral technique and what is vocal technique. And we were talking about harming voices. Some people, was that Lacey? There, are you leaving?
Camille said she had to go, so I just said, nice to meet you.
Okay, awesome. I was confused. Okay. So a lot of people, they're concerned about, let's say, with the changing voice, that they're worried about hurting the changing voice. What do I do? The voice is dropping. And to me, that is not a concern once you know proper vocal technique. The bigger concern that I see is that choral technique hinders the singers long term. And for the students that do want to continue, especially, they have not developed the skills that they need to continue their career. And we are really the only voice teacher that many of our students have. And I'll tell you a little story, and I tell the story in the course, but I think it's worth telling again. When I was student teaching, I begged to student teach with this choir director who had this absolutely amazing choir. Blew me away. I went there, and 250 alumni would come back and sing 6 songs in 4 to 8 part harmony. It was unbelievable. So I begged this guy, will you take me on as a student teacher? And he said, well, I don't usually take on student teachers, but he took me on. He didn't know anything about my skills, but I kind of was persistent, and I was highly recommended by my choir teacher. So I went there, and I walked in, and I was mesmerized by his teaching. He was very engaging, very intimidating, which is not what I would want other people to do, but this was a different time. And his choir sounded amazing. And there was a local voice teacher in the community who he'd have come in as a guest clinician, nice guy, really, really fine bass baritone singer. And I heard for years this guy's name. He was this amazing vocal technician, this voice teacher in town. So I started studying with the voice teacher. So I was going to the high school, learning from the choral director, and then I was going to the voice teacher in the town who had a good number of those students. And it took me about 3 months to realize that the choral director was creating this beautiful sound out of the choir, and it was the opposite of what the voice teacher was teaching the kids. And the voice teacher was teaching them healthy technique, and then the choral director was getting them to conform their sound. And it was this constant push and pull because you had this brilliant choral director, brilliant mind, creating a brilliant sounding choir that any of you listen to it, you would be mesmerized. There's this one video online of the alumni coming up. But my point is that these kids were getting a first-class choral experience from this man who was a mesmerizing and intimidating choral director. But they were getting their voices hindered every time they sang. And the more awareness they gained from their private voice teacher, the more their voice hurt being in the choir. Now think about that for a second. And now, how many of you have heard the stories of the college choir director and the voice teachers saying, the voice teacher saying, I don't want my students in the choir. I don't want my musical theater students in the choir. There's a reason for it. When I was in college, I said, oh, these arrogant voice teachers, they want the kids all to themselves. But there was a reason why that was happening. And it's because choir directors traditionally are teaching choir techniques, and the choir techniques are hindering the solo voice, the color of the voice. Does that make sense? So that's the premise of what I'm teaching, is clarifying what the choral techniques are versus what true vocal technique is. And I spent the first decade of my career figuring out, how do I get my choir to sound uniform, sound beautiful, sound vibrant, and not constrict the voices like my mentor, who I wanted to be like. I wanted to be like that guy and have that program. How do I do that in a healthy way? I knew too much to allow myself to teach those techniques, and yet I wanted my choir to be as good as his choir. So that's the starting point of choral versus vocal technique. With that, can any of you think of what a choral technique might be? Something that is not healthy for the voice, but would be a common thing that a choral director would do? Lacey?
Taking spin, vibrato out.
Very good. That's one, right? Getting rid of the vibrato, right?
The natural air that makes the voice healthy. Big time.
Yeah, that's a perfect one. Right. Any other ones that you can think of? I could give you a few more just to think about it. Jen.
Eliminating the vibrato, telling them
Yeah,
you don't want any vibrato at all.
right. That's exactly what Lacey said. You both said the same thing. The getting rid of vibrato. That is
Or
definitely
making them have vibrato when they don't, trying to
Yeah,
artificially force it.
yeah. And there is that school, that old school, like the old Westminster Choir College sound was all about the big vibrato, the big. Everybody's like an opera singer, right? Big vibrato. So
I think
forcing that, Lacey.
range, locking you in as a bass or a tenor, not letting you
Yeah.
exercise full range of your voice.
Yeah, how many times have you gone to a festival of some sort where the conductor's vocalizing everybody and then they just stop the altos? They go, okay, altos, you stop here. Sopranos keep going up. Like, hello? Why? Oh, because you don't sing high. Or we're going down. Okay, sopranos, drop out, just the altos. Right? That is
Do they really do that?
I have seen that so often from all state conductors, all county conductors. My whole career, I've watched that.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I guess in my universe it's not, so I don't look for it, but I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, it's insane because in their mind, but think about it, it goes back to like a mission. In their mind, they want to create the best sopranos, the best altos, the best tenors, the best basses. So somehow in their brain, they've decided that a bass has this range and a tenor has this range. They're not thinking about everybody should have a healthy voice, and they just happen to be placed in a certain area because the need of the group, or because maybe they're most comfortable in that range, but not because they can't sing in another range, right? It's like I always say to the kids in my treble choir, if you all had the same exact voice, you wouldn't all be singing the same exact part unless we wanted a unison choir. Somebody has to sing part one, and somebody has to sing part two, and somebody has to sing part three. And a conductor walking in doesn't know who should be singing where. They don't know that I had to move 5 students down to the bottom because I don't have enough people down at the bottom. They don't know that, but they come in and they make an assumption and they say, don't sing low, don't sing high, right? So that's another one. Can you think of any other things? We talk about vibrato, too much, too little, stopping them from vocalizing. What else?
What were you mentioning about blend that I interrupted you at?
What does blend mean?
To me, it's meant tonal center and like what you're singing, that you are matching in a chord structure or whatever, you are matching what the sound should be.
And what should the sound be?
Probably open to interpretation of the director.
Right. So when I think of blend as conform.
Right.
Right. So conforming is trying to fit a mold, right? Now, you might be thinking, well, I want them to sound good. If they're not blending, then how are they going to sound good? Well, there's another way to do that. What's the other way? What's the alternative of blending?
Not.
Well, that would be bad, wouldn't it? How about listening?
Oh, yeah.
How about listening?
Don't sing louder than the person next to you. If you
Right.
can't hear the person next to you, you're singing too loud.
Right.
So if your choir is singing and they're not listening, okay, let's just say they're just singing. They learn their music. They're excited. They're all singing out. Choir director A says, I want you all to blend, right? So what that means is I want you all to conform your sound and nobody stick out. Choir director B says, I'd like you to make sure you're listening to all the other sections while you're singing. Make sure you can hear them as you're singing because you're all sharing this experience together. One choir director A is conforming everybody into a mold. Choir director B is saying, hello, you're all here. You're not at home making a TikTok video. You're all in one room performing together. Share that experience. It's like having a conversation and two people are talking at the same time at each other, right? So that's another example of blend versus listening. And it's not semantics. It really isn't. Because I'll take it one step further. That choir director that I talked about also would have one student sing, the student with the ideal voice, the ideal voice, and then get the next student to match that voice. And then the student after that to match that voice. Don't think colleges don't do that. Some of them do. Okay? And so if they're matching the ideal voice, number one, you're talking about growth mindset. You're saying you're perfect. Now everybody else, you're imperfect. You have to be perfect like that person. That person doesn't want to get any better because they're perfect. And then everybody else is just trying to conform to be as good as that person. That's taking blend to the extreme. Take listening to the extreme. You will get a completely different result. Right? So, that's another example of why a voice teacher might not want their student in a choir, right? Take listening to the extreme. Yeah. That's a good one, right? Taking listening to the extreme. I mean, imagine what they can get out of it. I want you to listen, imagine it's just sopranos and altos, and you say, altos, I want you to sing your part, and I want you to listen to every articulation that the sopranos did when you're singing your part. While you're singing. You can get them to listen to a lot while they're singing. They will change the way they sing and they will probably have amazing articulation when they're listening to the soprano's articulation. So listening is such a valuable thing. What else can we come up with? So far we've talked about vibrato. We've talked about stopping the range. We've talked about blend and the extreme conforming. What else? Anything else you could think of?
Make your belly big when you breathe.
Yeah.
Oh, that
Belly.
irritates me. If you don't make your belly big, then you're not breathing properly.
Right. Yeah. And what does that really do? First of all, again, going back to blend, everybody's different. Everybody needs a different amount of air. And the amount of air that you take in is not the amount of air that you need to create a compressed sound. And if you take in too much air, you could become overly airy too. So that is another, and again, in that situation, it could be that the choir director knows what they want, but they don't know how to teach a lot of people at the same time. So the information that they're giving out might help some people, but hurt others because the information is not specific enough and clear enough to help everyone. Does that make sense? It could not necessarily be bad. It might not necessarily in itself be the wrong thing to say to a person, but it might be the wrong thing to say to 40 people at the same time, and therefore hurt 5 students or 10 students that are then going to their voice teacher, who are now putting pressure in the wrong place and not singing in a healthy manner, right? How about have you ever seen fish lips? Fish lip vowels like an E, ooh, conforming the sound where you round your lips so no vowel sticks out. If all the vowels are rounded, ooh, then guess what happens? Everybody blends. And then where does the sound go? Goes back into the throat. Ooh. And you know what happens when you hear a choir that does that? They have the most beautiful sound for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then you are as bored as humanly possible because the sound can't adapt. It sounds beautiful when you're doing those madrigal pieces, or Renaissance pieces, I should say. And then all of a sudden they try to do a spiritual, I got a head around walking, ain't that good, right? Everything, and then the soloist comes out, right on, King. Everything sounds back in the throat with no resonance. And these kids are given 100%, and their sound is forced back, and they have a pretty sound, and everybody's like, wow, that choir is amazing. But they're bored, and they have no adaptability. Again, that's another example. The lips pushing the sound back. So we just mentioned a whole bunch of different things, and there's more than that too. But I'm doing this to explain the overarching premise of the vocal technique for the choir director. And first of all, becoming aware of what are the techniques that get in the way of healthy vocal technique. And a lot of these things are actually to the detriment of developing the voice. Imagine being that voice teacher that I was mentioning. These things are what choral directors use. Those are the bag of tricks that a lot of them use when they go to choral festivals. And those students, and in the high school where I student taught, those kids were passionate. They were super passionate about being the best choir. A lot of them went off to music school. A lot of them went off to to be in the music world. And this guy brought a lot of great skills to those kids. If he really knew that he was damaging those voices or hurting those voices, he would never do that. The problem is when you get good at doing it one way, you don't want to change what's working, right? You don't want to change what's working. So people like him, they don't. It's like la 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 la. I don't want to hear what the voice teacher's doing over there. He's a great voice teacher. Go with him. La 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 la. I don't want to hear it. And he's going to keep doing it that way. So our job here is to learn what healthy vocal technique is and how to apply it to a large group at the same time. Because that's the other element. How do you reach everybody when you have 60 people at once? How do you say the right thing that doesn't hurt voices? So that's the premise of that phase 3A. That's the vocal technique. Phase 3B is after you've gotten through that, then I talk to you about how to teach anyone to match pitch, which is really the same thing again, that becomes more specific to a one-on-one situation. So I end phase 3A talking about the changing voice, which we talked about a few classes ago. So we went from everybody to the changing voice, and then phase 3B, which is, okay, now how do you deal with that student that really just, they're not matching pitch? But it's all the same. Everything in 3A relates directly to 3B. It's not like I'm going to unveil some new thing that you've never seen before. It's all there. It's just more specific. And so between all of that, I think you'll have all the tools that you need to develop a really healthy vocal technique in your singers.